Forget everything you think you know about sci-fi. The 1940s didn't just invent rubber monsters and mad scientists. They rewired our imaginations and set the rules for every blockbuster that followed. How did a decade sandwiched between world wars turn cheap effects and wild ideas into genuine cinematic magic? What secrets are hiding behind those flickering black and white frames? Grab your popcorn, because the answers are weirder, bolder, and more influential than you'd ever guess. And trust me, some of these classics have been hiding in plain sight, waiting to blow your mind. Dr. Cyclops, 1940. It's one thing to shrink a hero down to size. It's another to make the whole audience feel small. Dr. Cyclops is the ultimate mad scientist fantasy, set deep in the South American jungle, where science and greed clash in Technicolor. A mysterious Dr. Thorkel, played with an icy stare by Albert Decker, invites a team of American scientists to his outpost. But what starts as an innocent research trip soon spirals into terror, as Thorkel reveals his latest experiment, a radiation device that can shrink living creatures down to the size of mice. Sound familiar? Sure, movies have shrunk people since then, but in 1940, this was uncharted territory. Every giant drop of water, towering blade of grass, and rampaging cat became a special effects showcase. Dr. Cyclops was one of Hollywood's first big Technicolor sci-fi movies, which means the jungle wasn't just green, it was alive, bursting with color and danger. The effects are wild for the time. Miniaturized humans racing through oversized sets, dodging predators, and outsmarting the ruthless Thorkel at every turn. It's campy, yes, but there's something almost primal about the way the movie turns childhood fears into blockbuster-sized nightmares. Dr. Cyclops doesn't just entertain, it dares you to imagine what science could unleash. In a decade where most films were still afraid to get weird, this one went full tilt and never looked back. Pioneering? You bet. This is the blueprint for every shrinking movie that followed, from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids to the world of Ant-Man. The only thing bigger than the visuals is its imagination. The Invisible Woman, 1940. Long before superheroes filled the box office, The Invisible Woman was showing audiences that sci-fi could be a riot, and it didn't need to be serious to break new ground. Move over, H.G. Wells. This isn't a brooding, haunted man wrapped in bandages, skulking through fog. Instead, we get Virginia Bruce as Kitty Carroll, a quick-witted department store model who volunteers to test a new invisibility machine invented by an absent-minded professor. And suddenly, the world has its first invisible prankster. What makes The Invisible Woman stand out isn't just the clever special effects, though for 1940, watching someone vanish, levitate objects, and cause chaos was a real showstopper. It's the attitude. Kitty uses her new powers to fight back against her horrible boss, bust up a gang of clumsy bootleggers, and turn the tables on every man who ever underestimated her. The movie zips along with wild comic energy, mixing screwball antics and sci-fi spectacle. Let's be honest, sci-fi comedies are everywhere now, but back in the day, this was a fresh, risky blend. A female leading control, playful effects that never forget the fun, and a story that celebrates mischief over misery. The Invisible Woman gave the genre a shot of adrenaline, proving you could be groundbreaking without losing your sense of humor. In the age of grim, mad scientists, she was a blast of fresh air and a blueprint for every wisecracking superheroine that followed. Not just pioneering, revolutionary. The Devil Commands, 1941. What happens when science starts asking questions nobody's ready to answer? Enter The Devil Commands, a fever dream of mad science starring the immortal Boris Karloff. Forget zombies and vampires. Here, the real horror comes from the desperate need to communicate with the dead. Karloff's character, Dr. Julian Blair, is devastated by the loss of his wife and will stop at nothing to reach her on the other side. But instead of a crystal ball, he builds a massive helmet wired to a generator, convinced brainwaves are the secret to the afterlife. If that sounds wild, it gets weirder. The machine works, but only with help from a sinister medium and a room full of unwitting volunteers. Soon, we're knee-deep in electricity, seances gone wrong, and scenes that play like proto-Frankenstein with a cosmic twist. The Devil Commands is part science, part gothic horror, all mood. You can practically smell the ozone. This movie is a time capsule of pre-war fears. What if science goes too far? What if we can't control what we unleash? And what price are we willing to pay for answers? Karloff brings a tragic weight to his role, making Blair both brilliant and blind to the cost of his obsession. The film's shadowy visuals and wild gadgetry set a new standard for Mad Lab aesthetics, and its ethical questions still echo in modern sci-fi. By the end, you're left wondering if the devil really commands, or if it's just us playing with forces beyond our understanding. Dark, electric, and way ahead of its time. Man-Made Monster 1941. Here's the secret sauce behind so many sci-fi blockbusters. Give us a regular guy, add one reckless scientist, then throw in a jolt of electricity and see what happens. Man-Made Monster is Universal's answer to the age-old question, what if you accidentally turned your friend into a supercharged menace? Lon Chaney Jr., before he howled at the moon, plays Dan McCormick, a carnival Dynamo Dan whose freakish resistance to electricity catches the eye of Dr. Regas, a scientist who's got a few too many wires loose himself. Soon, Dan is transformed into a living generator, glowing in the dark and controlled by the maniacal Regas. This isn't just a monster movie, it's an early superhuman story, decades before comic book heroes took over the world. Chaney's performance is surprisingly tragic, balancing his new powers with the horror of losing his free will. Every flicker of light feels like a countdown to disaster. Man-Made Monster isn't subtle, but that's the point. It's a 1940s B-movie with all the fixings, creepy labs, crackling lightning, and a tragic hero you actually root for. Its themes of exploitation, unchecked science, and the price of progress are pure genre gold. The film paved the way for every experiment gone wrong story that followed, proving you don't need capes or costumes to make sci-fi unforgettable. Sometimes all you need is a bolt of lightning and a really bad idea. King of the Zombies 1941. Think zombies are a 21st century thing? Think again. King of the Zombies was shuffling out chills before George Romero ever picked up a camera. But this isn't your modern apocalypse. This is the 1940s, so expect voodoo, wartime spies, and a comedic twist. The story kicks off with a plane crash on a Caribbean island, where a trio of Americans, including the always hilarious Mantan Moreland, stumbles into a mansion run by a suspicious doctor. What's his secret weapon? A mind-controlled army of the Walking Dead. Sure, the effects are creaky by today's standards, but the atmosphere is pure pulp. Secret passages, shadowy laboratories, and zombie servants who look like they just wandered in from another dimension. There's espionage, supernatural mayhem, and plenty of one-liners from Moreland, whose comic timing steals the show and adds a layer of self-awareness rare for the era. But here's the kicker. King of the Zombies isn't just a haunted house romp. It's an early blend of horror, sci-fi, and satire, using radio waves, brain experiments, and government paranoia to fuel its story. The film gave American audiences their first taste of zombies as products of science, not just superstition, paving the way for decades of genre-bending mashups. It's weird, it's wild, and it's way more influential than it gets credit for. The blueprint for every undead outbreak started right here, with a mad scientist and a whole lot of nerve. The Wolfman 1941. Some monsters are born, others are made, by science, by myth, and by movies that refuse to pick a lane. The Wolfman isn't your garden variety horror flick. It's a shape-shifting juggernaut that helped redefine what sci-fi could get away with on screen. Lon Chaney Jr. steps into legend as Larry Talbot, a regular guy who stumbles into a nightmare after a run-in with a cursed wolf and a fateful bite under a full moon. Cue the silver cane, the foggy forests, and the famous transformation scenes that left 1940s audiences clutching their armrests. But here's the twist. The movie leans hard on the idea of science versus superstition. Larry's condition isn't just a curse, it's a medical mystery that doctors can't solve and scientists can't explain. The film throws around talk of hereditary traits, psychological trauma, and lunar cycles, layering in enough pseudo-scientific jargon to keep you guessing. It's a monster movie for people who like their scares with a side of speculation. The real innovation, though, is in how the Wolfman plays with empathy. Talbot is more victim than villain, tormented by forces he can't control. The groundbreaking makeup effects, every strand of hair painstakingly added by Jack Pierce, set a new bar for transformation scenes, influencing decades of creature features. By making the audience feel every ounce of Talbot's pain, the film transformed the werewolf from a fairy tale beast into a complex, tragic figure. The Wolfman didn't just bring monsters into the modern age, it made them human. Every werewolf, mutant, or tortured anti-hero that followed owes a debt to this groundbreaking blend of horror and speculative fiction. It's not just a scream, it's a howl that echoes through sci-fi history. The Magnetic Monster, 1943. Imagine a world where science accidentally creates a force so powerful it could destroy the planet, and it's up to a bunch of scientists in lab coats to stop it before everything goes boom. That's the wild premise behind The Magnetic Monster, one of the first films to turn atomic age anxiety into edge-of-your-seat sci-fi. Released as the world was getting wise to the power and terror of nuclear energy, this movie put real scientific fears front and center. The story launches with a seemingly routine investigation. A mysterious energy surge is wreaking havoc in a city, pulling metal objects off the ground and frying electrical grids. Enter Dr. Jeffrey Stewart and his crack team of researchers, who quickly discover that the culprit is a man-made radioactive isotope that feeds on energy and grows with every second. Suddenly, we're racing against time, watching as these white-coated heroes build gigantic machines, risk their lives, and try to outsmart a monster that isn't flesh and blood, but pure atomic chaos. The visuals are packed with wild laboratory contraptions and early stock footage of real-world technology. It's the blueprint for every disaster science film that followed, from The Andromeda Strain to The Core. The movie blends real scientific concepts with old-fashioned thrills, creating tension out of ticking clocks, Geiger counters, and the kind of jargon that makes your head spin. The Magnetic Monster might feel quaint now, but in the 1940s, it tapped into something primal, the fear that our brightest discoveries could be our undoing. It's a nerve-jangling blend of fact and fiction, and a direct ancestor to every movie that asks, what if science went just a little too far? Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, 1943. Before crossovers were cool, Universal was already smashing monsters together like action figures in a sandbox. Frankenstein meets the Wolfman is exactly what it sounds like, a cinematic collision of two iconic creatures in a story so outrageous you just have to watch. Larry Talbot, desperate to end his cursed existence, seeks out Dr. Frankenstein's secrets. Instead, he awakens the monster himself, played by the towering Bela Lugosi. What follows is a madcap journey through haunted castles, moonlit forests, and a village that's had enough of monsters for one lifetime. But beneath the campy title lies a genuine milestone for sci-fi. The movie fuses together different mythologies using the language of pseudoscience. Electricity, lunar cycles, brain surgery, you name it. Suddenly, the monsters aren't just creatures, they're subjects of experimentation, resurrection, and even therapy. It's the first true shared universe, complete with callbacks, continuity, and the sense that anything can and will happen. The special effects take center stage, from storm-drenched labs to wild transformation scenes. The script gives each monster a tragic edge, making them both victims of circumstance and agents of chaos. Audiences in the 1940s had never seen anything like it. The collision of two worlds, where science and legend blur, and nothing is sacred. The film's legacy, it paved the way for decades of monster mashes, crossover events, and genre hybrids. Every Avengers-style team-up, every movie that throws the rulebook out the window owes a nod to this one. Frankenstein Meets the Wolfman is messy, brilliant, and absolutely essential, a fever dream that changed how Hollywood played with its biggest toys. Phantom of the Opera, 1943. You think you know Phantom of the Opera? Think again. The 1943 Technicolor version is more than just a gothic musical. It's a proto-sci-fi thriller that uses science as the spark for one of cinema's most tragic monsters. Claude Rains stars as Eric Claudin, a gifted violinist who, after a disastrous accident with acid, is left disfigured and driven to madness. But before the mask and the haunting, there's the laboratory. Claudin is obsessed with music and chemistry, believing he can change his fate through science. This film flips the classic horror formula on its head. Instead of ancient curses or supernatural powers, the monster here is the result of ambition, experimentation, and one catastrophic mistake. The Grand Paris Opera House becomes a maze of secret passageways, shadowy labs, and theatrical spectacle. Every color pops, every shadow hides a secret, and the sense of dread builds with every note of the score. What makes this Phantom a sci-fi pioneer is how it frames the story as a cautionary tale about the limits of human invention. Claudin's tragedy is rooted in his drive to improve, to break the rules, to use science as a shortcut to greatness, and it's that same drive that destroys him. The film's lush visuals and heart-wrenching story influenced countless misunderstood genius tales, blending spectacle and sorrow in a way that stuck with audiences. In the end, Phantom of the Opera is a science-fueled nightmare that asks, how far will you go for your dreams, and what happens when those dreams turn on you? That's not just horror, that's classic sci-fi with a tragic twist. House of Frankenstein, 1944. Just when you think things can't get any wilder, Universal serves up the original monster mash. House of Frankenstein. This film is the genre's answer to the ultimate crossover event. It's got Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, the Wolfman, a hunchbacked assistant, and a mad scientist, each one with their own twisted plotline, intersecting in a swirling tornado of mayhem. Karloff returns, this time as the scheming Dr. Niemann, who escapes prison and immediately starts resurrecting monsters like he's building his own private army. The plot zigs and zags. Niemann wants revenge, Dracula wants blood, the Wolfman wants peace, and Frankenstein's monster, well, he just wants to smash things. The film's real genius is how it juggles so many characters and crazy subplots, all under the loose umbrella of mad science. Brain transplants, electrical revivals, and a secret castle laboratory, House of Frankenstein turns the genre into a wild playground where anything goes. Every set piece is bigger, bolder, and more chaotic than the last. The cast is a who's who of horror legends, and the script leans hard into the fun, refusing to take itself too seriously. In the process, it invents a new kind of cinematic universe, one where the impossible is just the starting point. House of Frankenstein didn't just pioneer the idea of sequels and spin-offs. It proved that sci-fi and horror could mix, match, and mutate with dazzling results. If you want to know where the modern genre mashup started, look no further. This is pure, unfiltered, old Hollywood imagination. No rules, no limits, just monster mayhem. House of Dracula, 1945. You thought the monsters were done? Think again. House of Dracula swings open the crypt for one more wild ride, delivering a crossover that feels almost too ambitious for its own good. Dracula, the Wolfman, Frankenstein's monster, and a desperate scientist all collide under the same stormy roof, turning mad science into the hottest ticket in town. John Carradine's Dracula arrives seeking a cure for his vampirism, hoping Dr. Edelman's lab can clean his blood. Meanwhile, Larry Talbot, the Wolfman, is also knocking on the doctor's door, begging for a fix for his uncontrollable transformations. The twist? Science is the real star this time. Dr. Edelman thinks he can treat these monsters with everything from blood transfusions to brain surgery. The lab is a wild mix of bubbling beakers and wild hope, where cure and curse trade places every other scene. There's even a subplot involving a hunchbacked nurse and Edelman's own descent into madness after a transfusion gone wrong. It's messy, sure, but House of Dracula is pure old Hollywood bravado. The film dares to imagine that science could save or destroy monsters and men alike. Every shot crackles with gothic flair, from moonlit chases to frantic surgery scenes. The result is a feverish blend of horror, hope, and just enough madcap invention to make you wonder if the real monster isn't in the operating room. This was one of the last true monster rallies, and it set the stage for decades of science can fix anything storytelling. The Body Snatcher, 1945. Buckle up, because The Body Snatcher takes sci-fi right back to the slab, literally. Based on a chilling Robert Louis Stevenson story, this Val Lewton production blends gothic horror with cold-blooded scientific ambition. Boris Karloff is at his absolute creepiest as Cabman Gray, a grave-robbing cabbie who supplies corpses to Dr. McFarlane, a surgeon obsessed with advancing medical science at any cost. It's all about the dark side of progress. How far will you go for knowledge? The film pulls no punches, dragging viewers through misty Edinburgh streets, shadowy alleyways, and anatomy theaters, where education comes with a side of moral rot. Every conversation between Gray and McFarlane crackles with tension. Gray's low, mocking tone a constant reminder that science's hunger for answers can get downright ghoulish. What makes this movie such a sci-fi pioneer isn't just the bodies or the secrets, it's the ethical nightmare. The idea that progress demands sacrifice, that the pursuit of truth can cross lines best left uncrossed. By mixing historical fact with pulp terror, The Body Snatcher made medical science into a battleground of right and wrong. It's haunting, atmospheric, and genuinely disturbing. Long before bioethics was even a word, this movie was already ringing the alarm bell. The Beast with Five Fingers, 1946. Ever feel like your hand has a mind of its own? The Beast with Five Fingers takes that fear and turns it into a full-blown nightmare. Set in an eerie Italian mansion, the film follows a group of schemers fighting over the estate of a dead, world-famous pianist. That's creepy enough, until the dead man's hand starts crawling around, playing piano and strangling anyone who gets too close to his fortune. On the surface, it's a wild, supernatural thriller. But look closer, and you'll find a proto-science fiction story about mind over matter and the limits of the human body. Is the hand really alive, or is someone behind the scenes pulling the strings? The movie keeps you guessing, weaving together psychology, suggestion, and the unexplained. The special effects are impressively eerie for the 1940s, using clever camera tricks and practical magic to make that hand crawl, grasp, and terrorize its victims. Peter Lorre brings his trademark intensity as the pianist's paranoid secretary, spiraling deeper into madness as the hand's attacks escalate. The movie is tense, strange, and unforgettable, a campfire ghost story by way of a mad science experiment. The Beast with 5 Fingers stands out as a bold leap into the uncanny, making audiences wonder what happens when science, psychology, and the supernatural collide. Before Evil Dead, before Addams Family, this is where the haunted hand got its start. Mighty Joe Young, 1949. Last but never least, let's talk about the big guy, Mighty Joe Young. If you think stop motion was just a King Kong thing, think again. This spiritual successor brought the giant ape formula roaring back, but with a surprising twist of science, sentiment, and jaw-dropping spectacle. Joe isn't a monster. He's a gentle giant, captured from Africa and brought to Hollywood as a nightclub act. What could possibly go wrong? Special effects wizard Willis O'Brien, the genius behind King Kong, teamed up with Ray Harryhausen to create visual magic. Every scene with Joe, whether he's playfully lifting pianos or smashing up nightclubs, feels alive and packed with personality. But here's where the sci-fi comes in. The movie explores themes of animal captivity, human ambition, and the ethics of putting nature on display. Joe's journey isn't just a rampage. It's a battle for freedom, dignity, and the chance to be more than a sideshow curiosity. What really sets Mighty Joe Young apart is its heart. The story's packed with humor, pathos, and action, but it never loses sight of the question: what happens when humanity tries to control what it barely understands? The answer, as always, is a mix of triumph and chaos. Mighty Joe Young didn't just break new ground in effects, it reminded audiences that the best sci-fi stories have just as much soul as spectacle. So, there you have it, the wild, weird, and wonderful 1940s, where science fiction didn't just break the rules, it made them up as it went along. Which of these trailblazers blew your mind? Did we dig up an old favorite or surprise you with something brand new? Drop your thoughts and forgotten gems in the comments, hit subscribe if you crave more cinematic deep dives, and don't forget to share with your fellow genre fans. Remember, in sci-fi, there's always another secret lurking in the shadows. What will you discover next?